going on to this Jupiter class. I'm going to talk all about Jupiter. I'm talking about Jupiter transiting for 13 months, for the next 13 months, starting tomorrow, moving into Sagittarius for all of us. And why I'm talking about the birth chart is because when we're looking at something that's transiting now, we all had that snapshot from when we were born. And we want to look at where the transiting Jupiter in Sagittarius, what house that's in for us. So it might be in our 11th house. And then it's going to light up issues or lessons or growth opportunities in community, in friendships, in setting goals. And for some people, it's going to be in their 3rd house, which is highlighting communication. It's another air house, so I use 2 air house examples. But communication is going to be highlighting, maybe you're going to turn into a writer. Maybe you're going to like start sharing your writing, or you already are a writer. So it really expands wherever it touches. And so you want to know for you where this is in your chart. This is why I'm doing 20-minute readings that are a video just like this delivered to you that talks about your natal Jupiter, but also the transiting Jupiter and what it's highlighting in your chart. Because wherever it's highlighting right now, wherever it's transiting, it's showing you where you have the potential to manifest, where you have the potential to really grow and expand in certain areas in your life. It's like a blessing. It's a bestowing gifts to you, especially because it's moving into Sagittarius, and that's its home sign. So it's kind of like a homecoming. Like you think of a homecoming party. That's what's going on here. It starts tomorrow, so you guys better wake up pepped and ready to go. And it's going to be going for 13 months, okay? Now, as you guys know about partiers, because Sagittarius likes the party, they can over party. They can party too hard. And so we do have to watch out for that. So that's what those readings are also going to talk about, kind of being aware, but also manifesting. So okay, I'm going to get started, but hopefully that answers some of your questions. And if you do have to go off of the Instagram, because I'm going to be talking for a while, if you do have to go, or if my phone dies, you can find me on YouTube and you can follow me there, and I'll have this video posted, and it's going to show the chart so that it'll make more sense to you guys. I really like it's hard to do on these lives to show you guys. I think that's what's coming next for Instagram and Facebook Live. I'm trying to figure out a way. I know on Zoom you can stream live on Facebook, but I haven't figured it out. So this is the best I can do. But if you check out my YouTube, I'll show you the glyphs for everything and where this is all happening. We have a super, super amazing new moon in Sagittarius that comes after the new moon in Scorpio, which is today. So it's a month from now in December, December 7th, which is funny. It's the same day and in the same degree, 15 degrees of Sagittarius. And today the new moon is in Scorpio, 15 degrees of Scorpio. So it's pretty awesome little coincidence there. Lastly, if you wanted to order a reading with me where I talk about your specific chart, you need to know your birth time, your birthplace, and your date. I'm super excited to do these. They've been really helpful for people. And if you want to do that, you just have to click the link in my profile, and there's a link to just order that. Okay, and it's just delivered to you. You get to watch it and see what you think. Okay. So I'm going to get started. So we're just talking about Jupiter moving into Sagittarius, which starts tomorrow, which is November 8th, and goes all the way until December of 2019. So it's a 13-month cycle, and it starts tomorrow. As I was just saying, Sagittarius is Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. So we always want to keep in mind when a sign is going through, when a planet is moving through a sign that they rule, there's going to be even more examples. There's going to be even more energy influencing that area. So wherever that area is in your chart. Now, that being said, if you are a Sagittarius sun or Sagittarius rising, Sagittarius moon, Sagittarius north node, Sagittarius south node, any of the inner planets, really, you're going to notice more energy, more potential for yourself this year, okay? It is like, I think of Jupiter is like Santa Claus, like coming in and just like, expansion here, expansion there. Oh, what do you want? You want some of this? Let's bring it in. And so whatever house this is in for you is going to show you where you have the potential to manifest. So looking at the chart, I wanted to show you guys, how are you guys doing? If you're just joining me on Instagram, I am looking over here because I am filming for my video on this, which is going to show you guys all the glyphs and all that. So here's Jupiter in the chart. It looks like a cross with it kind of looks like a 4. It's a cross with this extra like exaggerated outward expansion to it. And we think of the cross as being matter. Like the cross is like the cross that we all have to bear, so to speak. It's like we have to create form. We are in a 3D reality. And then that extra added opening and that expansion in the glyph for Jupiter shows us that it's really about our spiritual fulfillment. It's about kind of opening to this limitless potential. And the example that I like to use is when people talk about when they go deep into meditation, or they've been, meditating for 14 days, and at some point they hit this like beyond, it's kind of like existential existence where they're united with everything and they recognize that all it really is one. And typically people will just burst into tears and like feel really connected and like nothing else matters. Like all this matter on planet Earth, all the 3D bullshit doesn't matter. It's really that connection to all that is. We say that the fire houses, so the first, the fifth, and the ninth houses are body, soul, and spirit. So if we're thinking of that, the first house is Aries house, the fifth house is Leo's house, and the ninth house is Sagittarius's house. So it is our access point to spirit. The galactic center is in Sagittarius. It's in 27 degrees of Sagittarius. We will have Jupiter, the great expander, on the galactic center towards the end of 2019. So this is a really amazing time collectively. We're going to definitely have some breakthroughs collectively to that all one consciousness, okay? And that being said, the shadow side, so there's the light side, the spirit, the connection to spirit, that's the light side of Sagittarius. The darker side, or the shadow side of Sagittarius, is very dogmatic, or thinking that there's only one way to get there. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that's going to happen, but we might see the rise of certain, religious fanatical things coming into focus again. And so being aware, and typically in the first week of Jupiter moving into a sign, like we look at last year when Jupiter moved into Scorpio, we had the Me Too movement just like right away, kind of just like typically when that first ingress of Jupiter into a sign, we're going to notice some huge shifts and changes. So kind of who knows what will come of that, but it can have something to do with religious leaders. It can, if we look at like what the Catholic Church is going through and all the kind of like shadowy things that are within that scope of like only being able to connect with spirit through the church, that kind of thing can come up. And it's ultimately Jupiter, in Scorpio especially, Scorpio is about unearthing things. And so the things that got unearthed in Scorpio, now in Sagittarius, we can set new goals. Sagittarius is a lot about goals. It's also about getting really expanded in our thinking. I have all my notes over here. And really, future thinking about the next generations. So with that all coming together, we really have the possibility for some new ways of doing education, some new ways of doing organized religion. Like, we're not going to get rid of organized religion. There's always going to be organized religion, but maybe there's some safety procedures that can be put in place, or certain things that can be filtered out this year. So we unearthed a lot in Jupiter and Scorpio, and now it's about expanding on those things, creating more systems. It's a lot about higher knowledge and education, and also some, my phone is going to die. Bummer. I do have my charger, I think. It's also about, thinking about those next generations, and also philanthropic. I can never say the word, but basically, you know what I'm saying? People that have money really wanting to make a difference and donate resources, time, energy to, underprivileged youth, especially. This is a really highlight for students, for bringing up those next generations of really future thinking and expanded minds, not just the system, because that is not what Sagittarius is about. Sagittarius it's about teacher-student, but it's about really opening and expanding the mind. That's why Sagittarius is also about travel, is also about longer journeys, and and about, you know, religion or spirituality, because it opens the mind and expands the mind, hopefully. And like I said, there's always the light and the dark. So when we're looking at, sorry, I have to close a window. When we are looking at Jupiter here, we want to know where that is in the houses. And so I'm going to go through the houses for you guys, but first I want to make sure, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Sagittarius, Jupiter and Sagittarius. And we think of Sagittarius as the executive, and not in a way of like, again, it's not like the cold harsh. That's more when we get into Capricorn, we recognize we might need to manage this. And so just know that that's where we're going. We also want to think about, right now, Saturn is in Capricorn. And we did have Saturn in Sagittarius. So you can think back to, you know, even just last year, Saturn went into Capricorn in January of 2018. So if you think about that year before, I definitely know, like, I just felt way more expanded in 2017. And then when we felt Saturn coming into Capricorn, there was kind of this restriction. So the same thing's going to happen with Jupiter. It's going to get all expanded. We might get big ideas. We might get really thinking that things are actually like just going to be amazing from here on out. And like, we can really think about new things that we want to do. And if we're not careful, then we can overspend. We can, you know, spend the year procrastinating and just thinking big ideas and not really getting anything done. So this is a year to actually put the things into motion, because once we move into where, because Saturn is in Capricorn, we do have those natural restrictions that's going to help us to build. And when we do move into where Jupiter is in Capricorn, we're not going to be as daring. All of the fire signs are very daring. They're very courageous. So we want to utilize that energy. We don't want to spend the year procrastinating, okay? So I just want to say that again, because that is one of the things about Sagittarius. They have lots of ideas, but it's harder to put them into motion. Yeah, and then it is a masculine mutable, which is interesting. When we have that masculine mutable energy, the mutable energy is changing. It's adaptable. It's able to go with the flow, which is very helpful for being a masculine energy. However, this is again where the procrastination comes in, or with the kind of ADD energy of like trying to do too many things all at once. And because it is fire and it is mutable, we want to make sure that we're investing our energy into the right fire, so to speak. We want to build one fire. We don't want to have 20 different fires going at different times. So because it's mutable, we have the opportunity to change and go with the flow a little bit, but we want to stay with one goal. We want to stay with one end result for this Jupiter and Sagittarius energy. The interesting thing about Jupiter, it's going to be making connections with Neptune and Pisces, and it's interesting to have Jupiter in Sagittarius, its home sign, and Neptune in Pisces, its home sign, and them making connections together. It's like super potent energy, and it's very spiritual. The two most spiritual signs. So we say spirit is Sagittarius. Well, Pisces is Pisces is we're all one, that all connection, that very, the water, bringing in the water influences of intuition, of spiritual insight, of downloads. So both of those have to do with that. And so when they're making connections to each other, we're really going to be able to expand and grow in that area. So it's a great year for study. It's a great year for teaching. It's a great year for anything having to do with metaphysics. And I said that for last year too. It's kind of just the trajectory that we're on. We uncovered a lot of our fears, a lot of our maybe past life issues with metaphysics last year. And then this year is about kind of just going with it and expanding and learning. And definitely a lot with astrology. We say Uranus rules astrology, but also Sagittarius, because Sagittarius is the teacher, and Sagittarius is about spirituality, and astrology definitely has that connection to spirit, to spirituality. So if you're interested in learning about astrology, I teach a whole program on it, and then there's many others, and there's lots of great book recommendations, but it's a great time to learn. So let's go through the houses, eh? I just want to say Jupiter, I didn't really talk a lot about Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest planet. It has a magnetic pull on the sun. It is so powerful, okay? So you always want to think about the connection between the way that you see the world, your ego, the sun is like the way that you just view things. It's just like you can't avoid it. It's just how you view things. And then Jupiter having a pull on that. And so when you think about Jupiter, really being aware of it is the largest planet and it does have a pull on your sun. So you always want to look at the connection between your sun and Jupiter, okay? And so if you have a trine or if you have a conjunction, oh my goodness, if you have an opposition, those things are all very important to look at, okay? It has a very close connection with the sun. Jupiter is about generosity, confidence. It's radiant. So people who have a stronger Jupiter placement in their chart, they're going to just radiate with light and just this kind of like sparkly beam. It's about opportunity, energy, resources, aspirations. It's very kind. I say, you know, I'm not the first one to say that in astrology that I don't know where else I've heard it, but it was so fitting that I was like, that is so fitting that, that Jupiter is like Santa Claus, but it's totally that energy. Like, what's it going to bring me? What's he got coming in? It's the gifts, the generosity that you have coming in, okay? And if your Jupiter makes aspects to other planets that are harsher or it cause conflict, then you can have issues there. It doesn't mean that you're never going to get gifts. It might just mean that you have to work harder for them, or that you have to really work at actually seeing and appreciating the gifts that you have. Okay. So, and then Sagittarius I talked about. So Jupiter and Sagittarius from tomorrow, which is November 8th into December of 2019. And I'm showing you the chart. If you're wondering on my video what I'm showing you a chart that has Jupiter here. It's the new moon in Sagittarius, which is December 7th. And it is with the sun and the moon in 15 degrees of Sagittarius. And then we have Jupiter here in the, I think, 7th degree of Sagittarius. So it's a really powerful new moon because Jupiter is going to be conjunct the new moon, okay? So I just want to say how rare this is because we're coming into this new cycle, and the first new moon that we'll get, which I get it that today, if you're joining me on Instagram, today is a new moon in Scorpio, but I'm talking about the next new moon, which is exactly a month from now, and it is at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. It's very powerful to have the ingress of a planet into a sign at the time of a new moon on that sign. So this doesn't happen very often. The last time that Jupiter was in Sagittarius was 2006. So November of 2006 to, I think, December of 2007. So you want to look to maybe what was up for you during that time frame. And okay, so this is obviously a very different time frame because we have different other aspects happening. You're a different person than you were in 2006, hopefully. So let's talk a little bit about the house by house for this. So for this next new moon, and if you can be watching this after the new moon in Sagittarius, and this is still going to be helpful for you, but you're going to want to look to where your Sagittarius house is. And now, because I don't do whole sign houses, some astrologers do whole sign houses, I don't. So you might have your Sagittarius house might straddle two of them. So it might be on the cusp of your 3rd to 4th. Now, it's important to know your cusp ruler for each house. So your cusp ruler for the 3rd house is going to be that first sign that hits your 3rd house, okay? But since this is in the 15th degree of Sagittarius, this new moon, you're going to want to know what house that's in. Now, in general, you're going to want to know if it straddles two houses, both of those houses are going to have influence. The first house is going to be influenced first, and then you're going to move into that other area of life, okay? So Sagittarius in the house system, you're going to want to look to where that is. You're going to want to look at if you have planets there, if you have your midheaven, your rising, your descendant, your IC there, if you have your north or your south node there, if you have anything really happening that's highlighting this house for you, you're going to want to know about it. The other thing to look at, I don't want to confuse you too much, but like for me personally, I have my progressed moon in Sagittarius. So it's like a double whammy. The progressed moon, again, not to confuse you, the progressed moon shows the internal phase that you're in. It lasts for about 2.5 years. Instead of the moon cycle goes around for 2.5 days, it's in a sign. This is talking about a 2.5-year cycle in your life. So if you have something like that happening, it's good to know. So this is why getting a transit reading with me is very helpful for this Jupiter transit, because then you can find those things out, okay? So let's get started. So going through the houses, we want to also be aware, I talked a little bit about the different houses and how there's fire houses, right? There's fire houses, there's air houses, there's water houses, and there is earth houses. The earth houses are all about accumulation. We talked about matter, about how the sign for Jupiter is a cross. with an extended outward reach. And that cross is about matter. It's about the things that you can create here. And then with Jupiter, you know, with that extra added emphasis is on expanding on that. It's really about touching and reaching your spiritual purpose, your spiritual fulfillment, okay? So when we're talking about the houses, the first house is fire house, and it's about your body. It's about your self, your identity, who you are, who you show up in the world as. It rules the head and the neck, and so you want to be aware of that. And when you have Sagittarius, Jupiter and Sagittarius, it's really expanding on how you come across, how you're going to show up, where your passions are in terms, since it's both a fire, you're going to have Jupiter in Sagittarius on your first house, which is a fire house. Now, if you have other planets here, it's also going to be affected, but it's really going to be a focus on, you know, your core identity, who you show up as. And of course, right, could be other things as well. Okay, and then the second house is an earth house. It is that matter house. So if you have Jupiter transiting through here, it's going to be on your resources. It's going to be about personal finances, your boundaries in terms of your resources, in terms of how you're going to spend and how you're going to save and how you're going to create. It is about matter. It's an earth house. So it's about working towards something, okay? And so when you have Jupiter and Sagittarius transiting here, again, you're looking to see, when I'm talking about these houses, I want to remind you that you're looking to see if you have Sagittarius on this house cusp in this house, okay? And if you have this transit happening for you, this year is a lot about not overspending, not getting too excited and spending a bunch of money on something. Hallelujah, it's great. The thing, so Sydney, go back and watch the beginning too, because I was talking about all the beautiful things, and then also just being aware of, it can be overexpanding. It can be like, I talked about in my Facebook Live how, and when Jupiter is in Sagittarius, we're like, I'm going to remodel my house. And you like do this whole new design for your house. And then the next year, Jupiter in Capricorn comes in and is like, well, how are you going to pay for this? You know, and like your bills all go up. And so it's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing. And having Jupiter here right now for this next year is a lot about how you can create the concrete money, bring it in, and how you can really build your resources. So it is a beautiful thing. Okay, the third house is about relationships. It's about relating. It can be with siblings. It can be with close communities, people you grew up with, your cousins, the education you received as a young person, but also how that education you received as a young person shapes you this year. So Jupiter in Sagittarius, this is, you know, Gemini's house. And Gemini is the opposite of Sagittarius. So you're having this really interesting, you always have this really interesting connection because you have your houses swapped, which is totally cool. However, you want to be aware of not restricting yourself in your expansion because, you know, you feel like not prepared enough, like you don't have the skills that you need to do the teaching or the education or the writing that you need to do. Okay, so this is really the house, Gemini's house. Sorry, I don't have water. What was I thinking? So Gemini's house is a lot about education, but also about writing and communicating and getting the word across. So for you this year, it's really about building not only so if we have the resources as the second house, the third house is how you're going to share those resources. So it's really about getting your word out and having courage and having the foresight to know what you want to share and just like getting out there and like spreading the word. So short journeys, you know, traveling around your state, traveling around like in a smaller way can be affected here, or you might want to invest in that in order to build. So it's a lot about relating. It can also be relationships stuff and expansion on building your core group of friends or core group of community. So the fourth house is the first of the water houses. And so to have Sagittarius here, it's kind of this interesting dynamic because the fourth house is protective. It's our roots. It's where we come from. It can have to do with property, where, you know, like land of origin. It's our inner world. And so Sagittarius is all about outward. It's very extroverted. And the fourth house is very closed in. And so it can have this interesting energetic thing happening, but we want to make sure with Jupiter expanding here that your roots, that your home, that your body is really something that you invest in this year, that you, not just money, but also time, energy, you know, redoing some things, maybe starting a new, even though the 6th house is, you know, your daily routines and rhythms, the 4th house is how you're taking care of this temple. So maybe you start something new in terms of your routines and your body. And then also it's expanding on, you know, the home in some way. So you might move, you might sign a new contract for a house or something like that might happen during this time frame. Okay, so 5th house, it is Leo's house, and we were talking about the fire houses. So this is another fire house. So if you have Sagittarius here, it's another double whammy. And Leo's house is, we said that the 1st house is body, the 5th house is soul, and the 9th house is spirit. So if it's your soul, it's really about having your own self-expression, your own unique fingerprint, so to speak, and really expanding on building the skills that make you you. Really not paying attention to the 50 things that you're not good at and just building the 5 things that you are good at. It is about also leisure. So it's like, don't play too much. Like you can go too far, like with any of these. Like I would say the people to be the most careful with this year is if you have this in your 2nd house, your 5th house, your 9th house, or your 11th house. I would say those ones are the ones that just be careful of not, like overextending, which is interesting because I feel like, yeah, anyway, a lot of those are fixed. And fixed, you know, we just got through a fixed cycle with Jupiter, and Jupiter in a fixed cycle is going to be actually a little bit more stable than when it's an immutable. So as we come into this mutable energy, just want to be careful of not trying to fill too many buckets at once, excuse me. Okay, so moving into the 6th house, if you have Sagittarius here, and so the whole next year Jupiter is going to be moving through your 6th house, then you're going to really want to really invest in your day-to-day work routines. If you've been wanting to get a puppy or something, really just think it through. Think about the next 5 years. Don't just think about this year, because it is the house of pets and day-to-day taking care of something else, taking care of animals, taking care of your plants. A lot of plant people, my plant people out there, whoop, whoop, representing. I got a lot of 6th house placements. This is just like domestic affairs, taking care, day-to-day service of the home, service of the things in the home. It's an earth house, so it's about matter. It's about creating. It's your, you know, day-to-day work routines that feed you, that bring home the bacon, so to speak. You have to take care of this temple in order to receive those. So that's how the 4th and the 6th house works together. And this is also about service. And this is one of the things about Jupiter in Sagittarius is that it is so expansive and it is so giving that you can get too much into service mode and to servitude. And so you have to really be careful and pare back and make sure that you're, you know, charging what you're worth. You're in a job that feeds you as well. And you can, with this placement, you just want to watch your health, your physical health and your mental health this year. And it can be a beautiful time, and it can really help you to figure out what's most important to you, but you don't want it to come at a cost. You don't want to have to figure that out because you've been hit down, so to speak. I'm not saying in a bad way. I'm saying like sometimes I have this where like I just keep going, and then I get sick, and then I'm like, okay, I probably overdid it, you know? So it's just like you want to figure those things out from the beginning so that you don't have to go there at all, right? Okay, 7th house is another relationships house. This is about partnership. Whereas the 3rd house is like sharing ideas, information, and very kind of a playful, like youth way of like changing your mind a lot. The 7th house is like, nope, this is just how it is. We have a contract. You're my husband, I'm your wife, and death do us part. It's about cooperation. It's about the give and take. It's about finding that equilibrium in relationships. So if you have Jupiter, if you have Sagittarius here and you have Jupiter is going to be transiting through this area, you're going to want to really be aware, if you're not already in relationships, you're going to want to really be aware that you can't just give and give and give You can't just take and take and take. There's got to be that give and take. And I highly recommend not getting married this year. Oh my gosh. If you're already getting married, you can just skip over this. But if you're not already getting married, like, and you decide you want to get married, maybe just wait till Jupiter moves into Capricorn. As I'm saying this, I'm like, watch, I'm going to like elope or something with some mysterious person. Because I could totally see that where like Jupiter and Sagittarius are like, everything's great. I love you so much. And then Jupiter moves into Capricorn. You're like, you're kind of annoying. So being cautious of that. However, if you're already married, just being aware of the give and take in relationship, and also investing in the relationship, investing in the things that you like to do together, looking at if you have other placements here or other connections to this. This would be a key one for working with me. I feel like I love working with couples, but I feel like there are these certain time frames where you just have to figure out what the missing piece is. And this might be a year where you're just trying to figure that out. Okay, 8th house is regeneration. Can also be degeneration, but it is the, you know, the house of the psychic. It's where Jupiter just was in Scorpio. If you have Sagittarius on your 8th house, you're dealing with other people's resources. You're dealing with things that you can't control. So when we had Jupiter in Scorpio, there was a lot of things that we had to deal with personally that we had no idea where it came from. Maybe it was karmic. Maybe it was our family line. We just didn't know where it was coming from. And we had to kind of be open to dealing with some shit that didn't feel fair maybe. And now that that Jupiter's moving into Sagittarius, we're kind of being freed of that, thankfully, and we're really being able to kind of expand the mind and take off a little bit. However, sorry, okay, so I know a few people that have this placement. I'm just like, right when I was like, sorry, I was like, oh my gosh, I can think of like 5 people that have this. It's not a bad thing, but I think that for you, maybe you'll get an inheritance this year. Maybe all that hard work is going to pay off. However, this influence of others is going to have, you're going to have another year of that. Okay. And so because of that, you just need to be aware of not getting too pulled into other people's dramas, not getting too pulled into other people's needs, and really taking care of what you need to take care of within yourself. The 8th house is a very private house, but Jupiter in Sagittarius is kind of opening it up a little bit. So this might be a time to get a solid family counselor, a good counselor, or do some kind of metaphysical work or something like that, because it is kind of opening it at a house that likes to be closed. So the 9th house is spirit. We just talked about it's triple whammy. So if you have Sagittarius on your 9th house, this is just a natural placement. And so some people have this and it's beautiful, and you're getting a triple blessing this year. And so you might just take off. You might just decide, I'm going to go and I'm going to travel all of the world, and I will be back in 2020. And we'll be like, okay, have fun. And then we'll see you like writing a blog and like sharing all these downloads and this amazing wisdom that you gain from the universe. And all these people that you meet and you get to talk to and like learn all these new things. Can you guys tell I want to do this? So this is about longer journeys, and it's not just traveling, it's journeys of the mind, being open, receiving information, but also sharing information. So with Jupiter here, you just want to be aware that you're going to be called to do something in that area. And the more that you can allow yourself to have that in some form, the less crazy you're going to feel. So you will need to give yourself just a little dose of that in some way. Even if you can't just drop everything and travel the world, you have to have little doses of that, because the insight that you'll gain during this year for the 9th house people for next year is really, you're just really going to build something amazing from it. We all have these different time periods in our life. And if the more that we can respect that everybody comes in with their own lessons, and the more that we can respect that within those own lessons, everybody's going through a different period in their life, the more that we can respect that and honor that, the more that we can really, go farther ourselves and have less judgment of others. So if you have Sagittarius in your 10th house, Sagittarius in the 10th house with Jupiter moving through here, this is another one of those houses that is like a great blessing, because it's an earth house. It is about creating matter. And it's persistent. The 10th house is super persistent. So it's your standing in society, your profession, your vocation. It's where your midheaven is. And so your reputation and how people see you and where you're going to shine in the society is very important here. So with Jupiter moving through here, it's just expanding on. If you have Sagittarius in your 10th house, you're already just a natural teacher. It's really expanding on that. And so you might be called into a field where you're sharing more, or you might be, level up in some way, like you get a new tier of your employment, or if you work for yourself, you're going to take on this other role and really start sharing more information. I really see that coming for this placement. However, with this placement, it's important to not take on too much. Okay, so 11th house. If you have Sagittarius in your 11th house, so Jupiter's going to be moving through here. It's really going to, oh my gosh, I just realized I have 5 more minutes in this room. I better wrap up. So this is going to be your long-term goals, your hopes, your wishes, your social relationships, the larger community. If the 10th house is your vocation and what you have to share, the 11th house is who you're going to share it with, who's going to be on your team, who's going to be helping you share this message, who's going to be guiding you and helping you manifest, and how you're going to meet these goals. It's 11th house is another air house, so it has to do with relationships, networking, who you build relationship with. So relationships with, and I don't mean romantic or intimate. This is not an intimate house. If you know any Aquariuses, they're not super intimate people. They're about bigger, the society. This is how we're going to affect change. And so that being said, when you have Sagittarius here, Sagittarius is all about big ideas, and Aquarius is about the society and how we're going to affect these big ideas. So it can get really big really quickly. And so again, it's one of those places where I say, be careful. Don't overexpand. Don't try to take your message on the road and think you're going to change everyone's mind about everything. Take on one goal and really network and see it through and build, but one thing at a time. Okay. And then the 12th house, if you have, the 12th house is another water house, and it's kind of like the boundless house. It is it's Neptune's house. It's Pisces house. So when we talked about at the beginning of this, I talked about Neptune and Pisces and how that is connected to this Jupiter and Sagittarius, and they're actually going to be making connections throughout this whole next year. So with this placement, it's very important for you to have spiritual discipline, for you to meditate, for you to take care of your body, 6th house, take care of your mind, and take care of your spirit during this year. And if you have this placement, you might find yourself really going through a harder period, but with the end outcome of being able to help others that are, have gone through that. So there might be this kind of test or this trial that feels kind of lonely, but then you'll come to the other side of it and you'll have a lot to share. So where the 9th house is very social and extroverted, the 12th house is journeys. It's the journeys of the mind and expansion. However, it's a very private house, and sometimes so private that it's hidden even from the person that has this placement. So if you have, this placement, it's really interesting and helpful to develop a spiritual practice and to work with spiritual healers that you trust. Okay, so those are through the houses. I hope that this made sense. If you have any questions, you can let me know. And for this whole next week, I'm going to be doing Jupiter in your birth chart in a transit reading for you individually through video, and it will be, I'll need your birth time, birthplace, and date, and it will be sent to you, and it has where Jupiter's moving through your houses, but also how it's affecting other things happening in your chart and your natal Jupiter as well. So if you're interested in one of those, just click the link in my profile, and I hope you guys have a beautiful day.